Hello everybody and welcome to another Doctor Who review. This time I'm reviewing a Fourth Doctor story. I'm continuing the Key to Time season over the next few reviews, and this time it's the Androids of Tara. As always, I have in front of me the television companion, which I use for the plot synopsis of all classic series stories. Here's Androids of Tara's plot. The Tracer brings the TARDIS to the planet Tara. Romana finds the fourth segment disguised as part of a statue, but is then taken prisoner by Count Grendel of Gracht. Grendel is plotting to seize the Taran throne from the rightful heir, Prince Reynard, and has mistaken Romana for an android duplicate of the prince's betrothed, Princess Strela, to whom she bears a remarkable resemblance. The Doctor is meanwhile captured by Prince Reynard's men, Zadek and Farah, and taken to his hunting lodge, where he's forced to repair an android double of the prince to act as a decoy for potential assassinations. Grendel then kidnaps the prince, and the Doctor has to modify the android so it can be crowned in his place. Grendel commissions an android duplicate of Romana equipped with a lethal ray and contrives for the Doctor to meet her. K9, recognising this as a trap, saves his master. Romana has meanwhile escaped from Castle Gracht, and she rescues the Doctor from Grendel's men. Grendel destroys the Reinhardt android and recaptures Romana. The Doctor regains access to the castle by rowing across the moat, and having first found and pocketed the fourth segment, manages to thwart Grendel's plan to seize power. The prince's men then attack the castle in force. Romana saves Strela from being killed, and the Doctor engages Grendel in a sword fight. Grendel, realising that he's been defeated, dives into the moat and escapes to fight another day. So here we are, the fourth story in the Key to Time season. It is David Fisher's second script of the season, and it is Doctor Who's reimagining of The Prisoner of Zendar, really. It's an interesting little script. I do like the way it's worked. It's this kind of working in a kind of medieval time frame, but with modern technology put in with these electric swords and electric crossbows, which I thought was quite an interesting way of showing the alienness a little bit. And the fact that androids are used quite a lot in the society, although it looks like the android technology is maybe not as advanced as it could be for such a society, but that kind of blends in a little bit, and how androids are used all over the place. And originally they were used for mining, apparently, according to the story plotline, and they've become just toys for the rich afterwards. It's not a bad little romp to go through, and it's really enjoyable to watch, and I do like these swashbuckling little adventures you get, but there's a lot of back and forth, as there tends to be with Doctor Who stuff. And it's really quite intriguing how that all works. So let's go through the characters first, and I'll pick up some of the good bits of the story afterwards. So we have the Doctor, played by Tom Baker. He's comedic, irascible self. He's really just in the peak of his role at the moment. The sarcasm that comes through, the fact that he plays a little bit of the dumb boy when Grendel tries to bribe him for taking the throne later on. That was interesting. The whole flippancy he has of questions that have been asked by other people is really quite cool. And the whole fact that he's having a banter with Romana about wanting to go fishing at the beginning. And the big bit of the flippancy of Tom Baker's role here, and the character of the Doctor, is when he makes a comment when Farah puts a burn mark in his hat. "Do you mind not standing on my chest? My hat's on fire." And that flippancy and that comedy element is really there. And it's the start of the comedy element you see a lot more in season 17. I've gone through some of the flippancy of some of the comedic talents that Tom Baker has, and comedic parts that Tom Baker has in The Creature of the Pit, and there was elements of that, of course, in The Pirate Planet as well, because both of them are influenced by Douglas Adams. This one's written by David Fisher, who he does better with the light-hearted adventure style than his Leisure Hive attempt, which is a bit more hard sci-fi. And even though the conversation and the fluency between the characters is still there, the actual subject matter is maybe slightly out of its depth, but it's still a favourite of mine. However, Tom Baker is great in this. I really do enjoy it. Yeah, he's definitely the Doctor in full pomp at the moment. It does seem to be the one that has the best use of locations as well. It's filmed in Leeds Castle. I'll come back to that later in more detail. But yeah, no, I do like the way that he's played here by Tom Baker. We then got Romana, played by Mary Tamm, who seems to be really relaxed in the role at this point. There's definitely a good rapport between her and the Doctor in this. It's good that Mary Tamm gets a chance to play Strela, as well as android versions of both Romana and Strela. I thought that's really quite interesting how that all works, and it's a nice way of getting her teeth into it, and isn't played straight when it needs to and for laughs when it isn't. And it's an interesting and quite well thought out but well done performance, and I like Romana in this season. I think she's become quite a good little character. She's not so perils and poorly in this one either, which she does get tied up, and she is maybe slightly subject to events to an extent, but there's certainly the alienness there coming out. Well, there's elements where she refers to the fact that she doesn't quite understand how horses work and how horses ride, and it was interesting about this contraption, and doesn't quite get that maybe there may be some modern-ish technology there, but there's also technology there that's a bit backward in the way they travel in this kind of medieval mix, and it kind of confuses her a little bit, I think is probably the best way. Then we've got, I'll come back to the big bad, the best actor of this. We've got Zadek playing by Simon Lack. Good lackey, head guard for Reinhardt. It's an okay role, I don't mind it. I think it works quite well. And there's not much to it, if I'm absolutely honest, but it's still a fun little role, and Simon Jack does a good job. Neville Jason is actually very good as Prince Reinhardt. You can tell he's a swashbuckling hero. He's injured for most of it because after being attacked by Grendel, which is a interesting way of taking out what is a swashbuckling hero out of the thing, and he's a bit of a fop in regards to his status. He is effectively about to become King of Tara and all that, but it's nothing bad about the character. I actually quite like the character overall, and I think it works quite well. You've then got Farah, played by Paul Lavers, who is the very loyal guard, but very gung-ho. Well, sword-ho. He likes using his sword. K9 kind of tempers his spirit at one point when he tries to threaten the Doctor when K9's available, and K9's used quite well here, and I'll get to K9 in a minute. But yeah, no, it's not a bad wee role, and Paul Lavers works quite well as the character. You then got K9 by John Leeson. Not obviously the voice work is there. K9 is used quite a bit here as a tool. Sonic isn't used at all in this one. I don't think Sonic's used a lot in this series, to be fair, and it's the same in the next one as well, Power of Kroll, but the Sonic isn't really used here, which is interesting. K9's been used more as the Deus Ex Machina with situations, and the seems to be the height of K9 and being used as the Doctor's best friend and being used to help out in sticky situations. And the bit at the beginning when K9 is playing chess with the Doctor just shows that relationship the Doctor has with K9 by this point, and the fact that K9 can beat him at chess, which Romana notices. She says mate in 12, but it's actually mate in 11, which I think quite like. But K9's solid in this. He doesn't seem that useless in this, and it does make a difference. You've then got Lamia, played by Lois Baker. Quite a slow role, quite an underrated role. She's effectively a servant who got above her station and had an affair with Grendel, and wants is to reciprocate and become his main companion. But Grendel isn't really interested because he's a fly-by-night lord as such. And it's interesting seeing that and seeing the play, the way it's played, and it's underplayed by Lois Baker. So when she does get shot outside the pavilion when the Doctor's trying to be ambushed at one point, is actually quite sad, and it works. And Grenville does show a bit of respect to her and does show a bit of caring for her after this. One more, just one of note, Cyril Sharps plays a small role as Archimandrite, the priest, effectively the Archbishop of Canterbury, who's part of all the ceremonies for the coronation and a marriage later on in the story. And it's nice to see him back after making his appearances a few times before. I think this is his last appearance in Doctor Who as well, and it's a nice little quiet role for Cyril Sharps to play. There's other cast members. They don't really do too much, so I'm not going to go too much into them, but we do have Count Grendel, played by Peter Jeffrey. He is the big bad, he is the baddie of this story, and my god, he hams it. But hams it in such a great way. He's such a conniving, scheming man. He really plays off well against everybody he's with. He plays well, particularly with Mary Tamm's Romana. I think the frisson between them two is actually really quite clever and quite cool. And of course, he plays all right with Tom Baker's Doctor, but he seems to feel he has the upper hand more with Romana than he does with the Doctor, and gets very frustrated with the Doctor. There is one instance where he does try and fool the Doctor. The Doctor plays along a little bit, but realises maybe he's trying to play for full, and realises he's playing for fools rather quickly, and realises that the Doctor isn't an enemy he could fight, really. apart from obviously the sword fight at the end, but we'll get to that in a minute. But yes, no, it's an interesting little role, nice scheming little role, and I think it works quite well. Okay, let's have a look at some of the bits and pieces of this story, which I quite like. So we've got the chess scene at the beginning, with the Doctor and K9 in the TARDIS. Romana lands the TARDIS, which I think is quite interesting, and quite smoothly as well, without much issue, which the Doctor doesn't really comment about. It just shows at this point how their relationship has flourished and become more respectful over time, and it's not got that frisson you had in the Rebus operation. The Doctor just wants to go fishing. Romana wants to go get the segment. She does that quite independently and gets the segment quite straight away. So the segment isn't really the main part of the story here. It's the same with Power of Kroll as well. It's not really part of the main story. It's just a subport. They get it out of the way quite early, which is interesting in itself, and I quite like the way they've done that, because it means the rest of the story just flows a bit better, because you've just got this adventure story that they're going through, which makes for a more interesting story to watch overall, and it actually is a nice little romp because of that. It does make an appearance later on when Lamia's trying to figure out what it is, because obviously Romana gets it taken off her by Grendel. The Doctor finds it later in Lamia's laboratory, which is interesting. But yeah, it's intriguing how that it's not really referenced that much here. It's kind of a side point. It's not the main part of the story, and really that's why I think this one works so well in regards to the search for it, because it's not part of the plot line. It's already been established. It's there. You just need to pick it up again, which I think makes it a bit more of an interesting thing overall. But it's kind of like back and forth standard fare of get captured, escape, get captured, go save, go rescue, come back, get captured, and you've got Grendel in between pushing pawns and trying to make moves to become King of Tara. The whole idea is that Strela, the second in line to the throne after Prince Reinhardt's been forced to marry an android version of Strela, and then he'll be killed, and then Grendel will then marry the android Strela, and then kill her, and then become King of Tara. There is a coronation scene near the beginning where there's kind of like this kind of official thing that the prince must be there at a certain time, otherwise he forfeits the crown, and he manages to get there. The android manages to cover for him, which is interesting. So that's an interesting plot point there. But Grendel's all the way trying to plot to try to just get one goal, and that's to become King of Tara. He's ultimately defeated by a sword fight, and the actual sword fight goes on for about 5 to 10 minutes, but it doesn't seem boring. They keep it going with the camera shots and the way it's directed, and it actually works quite well for it. I quite like the sword fight as well. It's fencing moves. It's not proper. It's not swords like you got in Mandragora. It's actually fencing moves that come out here, but it goes back to the Doctor's strength in sword fighting that he's shown in the Sea Devils and in the Mask of Mandragora previously, and will show again in the King's Demons. The Doctor does a bit of sword fighting again in the classic series, but this latest version is a lovely little sword fight, and actually is a great little set piece for the 4th episode. You don't really get the sense of who's got the upper hand really through most of it, but you do end up by the end Grendel giving up. I can't really defeat the Doctor, so I'll just jump in the moat and disappear, which is a bit of a lackluster ending, but there's not much you can really do about that, I suppose. The idea of androids being there and being involved with the society to a small extent were usually there for mining. Now they're used as playthings, but the technology isn't 100% great, because only Lamia and really the Doctor know how to fix them and work them properly. Lamia probably does a better job overall because she knows the basis of how the technology works, but even so, it's interesting seeing that element there as used as subterfuge more than anything else. And as I say, the Prisoner of Zendar is giving the vibes here. It's very much that kind of storyline and that swashbuckling adventure, and it's actually quite enjoyable to watch. It's a nice little romp, and I didn't really get bored throughout it. Filming wise, mostly outside shots, everything outside locations at Leeds Castle near Maidstone in Kent, and the scenery looks lovely. There is one scene though I don't quite like in regards to the effects, and that's when they try and put a glass painting on top of Leeds Castle from afar, and they try and put these extra kind of turrets, kind of like Turkish turrets. It doesn't work. It just doesn't. The effect isn't great. But there's not much to visual effects in this one. It is very basic in the way it works and set pieces, and the BBC is always good at doing historical castles and things like that, and these set pieces fit in well with what you see at Leeds Castle. And a lot of stuff is filmed around the castle and different bits and gardens and things like that, and it's really quite effective, and it's really well shot outside all the stuff. What I understand, the pavilion that the Doctor goes to meet up with Romana in the middle of the story, which he manages to escape via a back door that's created by K9, that was actually built. Everything else built for the story. Everything else is already existing and redressing existing sets, which I thought was really cool and really interesting. And I think it's a really well served story because of that. And the locations just make you sell it a bit more. And the studio stuff's pretty solid as well. There's not much ropiness in the sets or anything. I mean, they're not really close to the sets to bump into them. There's a bit more of that in Kroll, which I'll get to next time. But yeah, no, it's not a bad wee story. I think it's quite a fun little romp, and it works quite well. And the direction that we have here from Michael Hayes is pretty strong. It gives a good bump along. The story's... It's not deep, though. It's not a deep story by David Fisher, but it's still an interesting romp and a nice story to go along with. And it's kind of keeping in the vibes of retelling stories that we've seen in Doctor Who in previous seasons, especially season 15, which was not 15, especially season 13, which is very heavy in retelling certain stories and certain ventures and fantasies and that from the past, like Frankenstein and the mummy stories of Egyptian stories of the pyramids and Mars and things like that. There's a lot of that in season 13, and this is another example of how period pieces, period stories redone in a kind of sci-fi tale really do suit Doctor Who, and how the format's so strong to make it work. The music by Dudley Simpson, there's a bit of the elements you get in early Tom Baker era. You've got that leitmotif, that do 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 do, coming in a few times with the organ. There's a bit of grandeur there with his Hammond organ that comes in, or Moog organ Moog synthesizer organ that comes in at various points that he always seems to have for this. But it's a basic Dudley Simpson 6-piece orchestra. It doesn't really detract too much. You've always got the timpanis and the high horns for the bits of jeopardy. It does work, and it just gives the whole feeling of Doctor Who of the mid-70s, which is really what it is. Overall, I do like this story. I think it's quite fun. It's not quite as good as Pirate Planet, but it's not far off it. So in that respect, I give it a rating of 3.5 TARDISes out of 5. Okay, let's see how that story stacks up with the rest of the Doctor Who stories I've reviewed in the Tom Baker era so far, and also overall. So the Android of Tara sits in alongside established and fairly well-loved stories like The Leisure Hive, Full Circle, State of Decay, The Sunmakers, The Pirate Planet, and The Creature from the Pit. 3 stories are lower in the ratings: Warriors Gate, The Rebus Operation, and the previous story to the Android of Tara, The Stones of Blood. And the most popular rated story so far of the Tom Baker era is The Horror of Fang Rock. Overall, there are still 2 stories at the bottom with 2.5 TARDISes out of 5. They are Timelash and Sleep No More. At the top are still 6 stories with 4.5 TARDISes out of 5. They are The Happiness Patrol, Inferno, The Day of the Doctor, The Caves of Androzani, The Tomb of the Cybermen, and Dalek. That's it for this Doctor Who review. Tell me what you think about the Android of Tara. Leave a comment down below. Do you like it? Leave a comment down below. Do you not like it? Leave a comment down below. And if you like this video, don't forget to like it and share it with the hashtag teamstructor. That always helps. And also hit that subscribe button if you like the channel as a whole, and the notifications bell so you know when a new video comes out. General rule, new video every Sunday at 4 PM GMT. If you want to support the channel even more, you can go to the Patreon at patreon.com/Deanstructor. For as little as £1 or $1 a month, you can help support the channel. That's patreon.com/Deanstructor. So this is the first of 6 Doctor Who reviews this month. More listings and coming us up have already been sent out. You'll see that in the playlist for this month. But next time it's The Power of Kroll, next Sunday at 4 PM GMT, and hopefully you can join me for that. Until next time, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.